Memories. Kat sat in stillness. Memory surfaced, slipping into her calm, demanding recognition and understanding. It haunted her quiet moments until it was either banished or accepted. To her, the end of Earth had happened less than a year ago. To everyone else, it was 1,000 years of history. Catalan Reyes had watched her world approach extinction. She had watched humanity fracture under the weight of approaching truth. She had watched hope become promise, then betrayal, then surrender. Earth had discovered the predecessor gate only months before the crisis. It had been a miracle of possibility, a door to survival. Then the asteroid was detected, and the great debates began. Were the gates a portent of survival? Could the threat be stopped? Could it be diverted? Could humanity endure what came after? Earth's leaders first chose certainty. They attempted to overwhelm the problem with power. They sent their nuclear arsenal, a public, decisive spectacle meant to demonstrate control. Instead, it betrayed them. It fractured the threat and made it worse. So they chose evacuation. Great fleets gathered in orbit, humanity's future measured in mass, fuel, and probability. The largest of them entered the gate and vanished into the unknown. They would become the Terrans. They saved millions at the cost of billions. Kat and her team chose differently. 20 scientists and technicians stayed behind, not out of defiance, but because their equations still contained hope. The gate offered another path. They built a network of focusing nodes, fragile, experimental, and barely understood. A lattice of impossible technology meant to bend trajectory itself, anchored by the gate, sustained by power they could command but never understand. Kat flew the final mission. Her ship became both control and node. She remembered the moment the system aligned, an irrevocable choice, light as a feather. A pause in inevitability. Then, as readiness flashed across the console, the switch flipped, power blazed. The largest fragments were diverted. Not all. The planet burned. Nations vanished. Cultures were lost in the space between seconds. But Earth lived. Her ship did not. She had entered the stasis pod knowing rescue was unlikely. What she had not known was that the gate's residual power would hold her in suspended survival for a millennium. 1,000 years of waiting, measured in no time at all. When the gatherers finally found her, the gate link had long since collapsed into memory. She woke in a universe that had continued without her. On Earth Station, they called her a savior returned. With her awakening, the gate flared back into operation, interpreted by many as a sign of her return, a symbol, a promise fulfilled across centuries. Only Ellen treated her as a person. The bracelet around Kat's wrist caught the station's light. Spiraled metal set with red and blue stones. Elegant, unassuming. A key. A memory archive. A command authority disguised as ornament. Ellen had given it to her on a day Kat could barely remember without feeling the pressure of 1,000 expectations. When the weight of Earth's adoration became unbearable, Ellen arranged passage in secret. The gatherers would take Kat through the gate again, this time into Terran space, into a humanity that had survived by becoming something else. Kat exhaled slowly. Memory was never just the past. It was gravity. And it never truly released those who had changed the course of worlds. But the world had not been saved, only changed. Millions still died. More than she could ever name, more than history would ever remember. She had given humanity time, She had not given it unity. The gate had been in their hands. She had held authority in a moment when authority meant everything. She could have closed it, forced the fleets to stay, forced them to face the sky together, forced humanity to solve the problem, or perish as one. Instead, she had allowed escape, allowed fracture, allowed a future where survival meant becoming different. Was that mercy? Or inaction disguised as compassion? She would never know. The Terrans had lived. Earth had lived. But something whole had died between those outcomes. Her own culture among it, destroyed by fire and impact. The survivors had returned and repopulated the land, but what had made them hers had not survived. Now they were people who resembled her, but remembered nothing else. Time had hardened choices made under dying stars. She had seen what came after, the Republic, the divisions, the myth built around her. History called it survival. Memory called it loss. She had lived both. Time did not provide absolution. It only clarified consequences. She was just Kat now. And that was a fragile kind of hope. That the ghosts of what might have been did not always lead to better futures. Perhaps this was the best of the worlds that could have survived. For now, that thought was enough. It allowed the memories to recede. Not gone. Never gone. She sat in silence, recovering from the cost of remembering. She could have remained in Earth space, lived inside her legend, taken any ship she wanted, gone anywhere she pleased. Instead, she left with the collectors who found her. She chose them because action mattered more than recognition. On Earth, the gatherers were revered. In Terran space, as collectors, they were reviled. They did not change their purpose to match their audience. They knew Earth had survived and chose not to speak of it. Kat understood that kind of purpose and respected their restraint. The collectors had never chosen one side. Some remained with Earth. Some traveled with the departing fleets. Not to escape, to endure, to ensure their purpose followed humanity wherever it went. When the gate reopened, they crossed without hesitation. Earth never restricted gatherer movement, even as it limited its own. Gatherers moved between places, as if they already knew the paths before anyone else did. As Kat struggled to surface from her thoughts, and they became too loud to remain contained, Whisper passed through the narrow corridor. She stood and hugged him without warning, burying her face in his fur. "I just need a hug." Whisper froze. His discomfort registered in every limb at once. He did not pull away. Kian watched, then shrugged. "Don't look at me. I don't understand this either." Kat reached out, still clinging to Whisper. "You. Come here." Kian sighed and stepped into the embrace. When the quiet sniffles finally stopped, Kat sat back. "I need to tell you both something," she said softly. "No more secrets. We need this if we're going to move forward." She met their eyes. "This is what happened to me, before the collectors found me." She told them everything. When she finished, Whisper and Kian sat motionless. Silence stretched. "I need you to understand why I left," Kat said. "There's nothing alive there for me now. Maybe one thing." She turned to Kian. "What will happen when the Terrans find Earth is still there?" Kian looked at Kat, and then his hands. "We have always been told it died when Terrans left. I can't even grasp the idea that it is there. I imagine that's how the Republic will take it. You could go back. This would open doors. You still have a world waiting. Your family. Your time. Do you want to? The question startled him. No, he said too quickly. Then steadier. No. That life is gone and they would write me off as crazy before believing. Let Earth introduce its own return. He glanced at Whisper. And you? Do you want your old life back? Whisper's pedipalps moved slowly. The rest of him remained still. No. Cat blinked. No? That's it? Whisper exhaled. I must return, he said. Not to who I was. A small pause. Biology requires it. He gestured to the ship, then to them. But this is purpose. Silence settled again. Not heavy. Certain. Cat stood. Okay, she said. Then that's our next step. She looked at Whisper. We take you home. A small pause. For biology, moving forward. Cat looked between Kian and Whisper before speaking, her tone calm but carrying quiet intent. We find our first step. The next will reveal itself. Her attention shifted to Whisper. Can you get us into Hrithi space without getting shot at? We're flying an ex-military ship, and we don't need attention. Whisper moved his pedipalps in a thoughtful pattern while his tablet chimed softly. That should not be a problem. Cat moved toward the bridge and lowered herself into the pilot's chair, settling into it as though she had never left such spaces. A small grin crossed her face as she glanced back at them. Are we ready to move, or do you still need hand-holding? Whisper and Kian exchanged a brief look before taking their seats. The Phoenix rotated forward, engines rising into a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the hull. They had only just departed Verge Point Station, leaving behind the bright precision of Terran civilization and setting course toward the neutral corridor. Terran space was young by galactic standards, expanding, confident, and certain of its trajectory. This system was the Terran Republic's 14th star, known as New Dawn Star, one of the provinces symbolized by the 14 circles surrounding the Republic's stylized star emblem. Beyond it lay older regions of space, shaped by powers whose histories predated Terran expansion. Few species attempted entry into Hrithi territory without invitation. The Hrithi were not known for overt hostility, yet their reputation carried an unspoken weight. They were one of the 5 primary species, and that distinction alone was enough to inspire caution. The Phoenix passed through the final Terran gate, leaving behind the last structure governed by familiar authority. Ahead stretched the neutral corridor, a region controlled only in theory by the neutral authority, whose jurisdiction extended primarily to the gates themselves. Everything beyond those transit points was negotiated, ignored, or quietly contested. In that absence of meaningful governance, crime and opportunity flourished in equal measure. At the helm, Whisper felt the first unmistakable pressure of biological timing. The molt was approaching, manifesting as subtle tension beneath his patterned exoskin, a quiet insistence that could not be postponed indefinitely. He had departed Hrithi space as an officer aboard a warship, aligned with hive purpose and expectation. He was returning without a vessel, accompanied by 2 Terrans, and burdened with knowledge that altered every probability he had once accepted. Behind him, Cat and Kian moved through the ship with quiet efficiency, preparing for a journey none of them considered routine. They understood that what awaited them would reshape the direction of their paths. As the Phoenix approached the Hrithi gate, Whisper spoke without turning. "Once we enter, I will transmit the codes from my former vessel. They will identify me as Hive-affiliated and grant clearance to dock." Kat studied him briefly. "Former vessel." "There will be questions," Whisper replied. Kian leaned forward slightly, curiosity evident in his expression. "And if they do not like the answers?" Whisper's tone remained steady. "Then I will provide better ones." The Phoenix approached the immense gate ring. The moment the leading edge of the hull touched the shimmering field between its arches, the ship vanished, reappearing an instant later in Hrithi space. It continued forward for only a few minutes before a nearby formation of Hrithi vessels issued a hail. "Terran vessel, identify your purpose," the speakers announced in a neutral digital voice. Whisper transmitted a coded response. A moment later, coordinates appeared across the main display. "Terran vessel Phoenix, proceed to Hive station in the Hive's edge system. Land is directed. The cast leadership will be waiting." The Phoenix adjusted course, its vector shifting subtly toward the assigned destination. 18 hours to the station. It orbits the fifth planet. A translation would simplify the name, but not convey its meaning. Words alone are not adequate. His tone carried no criticism, only clarification. As Phoenix continued its transit, Kat turned to work she could make meaningful rather than drifting into memories still too near. She began recording what she remembered of her lost people, starting with the first archive she found on the Philippines. She was neither scholar nor writer, so she worked in corrections and margin notes, letting the ship's AI shape her fragments into readable form. It filled the hours. It also eased, if only slightly, what absence had left behind. Hours later, the station emerged against the dark, immense and unlike any Terran construction. Its surfaces curved in sweeping spirals, intersecting at angles that felt deliberate rather than engineered. Docking clearance arrived without delay. The ship's AI accepted the guidance path and carried Phoenix smoothly toward its assigned berth. Magnetic clamps engaged with a muted resonance through the hull. Systems powered down in quiet succession. When the airlock cycled open, Kat, Kian, and Whisper stepped into Hrithi space. Whisper moved ahead, his posture composed but purposeful. He explained that the caste elders wished to understand why he had returned without his vessel, and why he had brought Terrans with him. They entered the chamber through a wide, low archway that opened into an oval space defined by layered curvature rather than straight lines. The architecture felt intentional rather than ornamental. Every surface shaped with a purpose Kat could sense, but not interpret. The lowest tier was flattened into broad, gently stepped platforms. Kat felt immediate relief at the familiar geometry, noticing with quiet gratitude that the gathering Hrithi had chosen to assemble along these stable surfaces. A line of figures waited opposite them. They were flanked by darker Hrithi, whose fur carried bands of deep red. Guards, Kat assumed from posture alone. Their stillness held tension rather than calm. The elders they protected stood slightly forward, their patterns unmistakable even to untrained eyes. Gold marked each of them, not as ornament, as declaration. One bore copper interwoven with warm metallic gold, the pattern flowing in intricate symmetry that seemed almost conversational in its structure. Another was black and gold, sharp in contrast and economical in design, the lines of his pattern angled like unspoken decisions. A third carried deep blue threaded through luminous gold nodes that formed networked constellations across his frame. Others displayed variations Kat could not yet interpret, but the principle was unmistakable. Gold signified authority. The secondary colors spoke of purpose. 8 elders in total. The copper-gold Hrithi stepped forward. His movements began before sound, arms lifting in precise arcs, pedipalps tracing subtle geometries, weight shifting across his limbs in a sequence that felt choreographed rather than spontaneous. He intoned Whisper's name through a series of harmonic clicks and tonal pulses. The tablet translated only fragments. Return, loss, inquiry. It was insufficient. Kat understood that immediately. Kian leaned closer, speaking softly before the device could catch up. He described the directionality of the elder's gestures, the emphasis in the cadence of his steps. He was beginning to read the language of movement in ways the tablet could not replicate. Whisper stepped forward. His posture shifted subtly, aligning with patterns the elders had established. He began to explain. His tablet relayed the basic structure of his account, that he had been dispatched to counter a Terran incursion, that the Terran fleet he encountered believed itself responding to a Hrithi threat, that both had been manipulated. At the mention of the Kreth, the room changed. Not audibly, not visibly in any conventional sense, but movement intensified. Feet repositioned, pedipalps tightened, subtle ripples of synchronized tension passed through the gathered elders, restrained yet unmistakable. Kat felt the shift as a pressure rather than an action. Whisper continued, describing the staged escalation, the engineered mutual destruction, and the final assault that left survivors from both species exposed. He spoke of the collectors, of the retrieval of the dead, of the Kreth harvesting those same remains for purposes unknown. This time the reaction was deeper, slower, more deliberate. The elders' movements carried the weight of internal processing rather than immediate response. Whisper allowed silence to form. Then he added simply, "I feel the molt." The copper-gold elder inclined his head, the motion resonating through the chamber like a signal acknowledged by all present. "We observed this upon your arrival. We will not delay you further," he said in carefully structured Terran. The language sounded compressed in his mouth, as though too narrow for what he intended to convey. He gestured toward Kat and Kian. "What are they to you?" Whisper turned back toward them. "They are my friends," he said. "They do not share the hive. We express that through contact and visible emotion. It is approximate. With them, it is true." A moment passed. The elders absorbed this without visible judgment. "Then they will remain," the copper-gold elder replied. "Your molt will be observed. Their presence will be part of its meaning. The hive will learn what you have learned." Whisper acknowledged the decision with a measured shift of posture that Kat had begun to recognize as acceptance. He paused beside them as he was led away. "It will take one cycle of your days," he said. "You are welcomed. They will speak with you. They will observe you. The hive must understand why you matter." Then he was gone. The chamber felt larger in his absence. Kat stood in the quiet that followed, aware that something irreversible had begun. For the first time since leaving Earth, she sensed that the path ahead was not simply a journey through space, but a movement into forms of understanding she had never been meant to encounter. And somewhere beyond language, the Hrithi were already understanding. Kat and Kian returned to Phoenix after Whisper was led away. The station corridors felt different in his absence. Not emptier, but less interpretable. Movement still flowed across curved surfaces in quiet patterns of intent, yet without Whisper beside them, the meaning behind those motions felt distant. Kian fared better than Kat. He had begun to understand Hrithi movement in ways she had not yet learned. Inside the ship, the familiar geometry of Terran design settled around them like a remembered habit. Whisper had anticipated this moment. Before departing, he had left extensive notes within the ship's systems. The AI presented them not as documentation, but as layered observations, fragments of explanation meant to prepare them for what was to come. Hrithi exoskeletons were not merely protective structures. They were expressions of biological state and cognitive alignment. A molt did not simply replace damaged material. It marked transition, growth, reinterpretation of self within the hive. His next form would be larger. The patterning might change. Experience, role, and internal evolution would be reflected in structure and coloration, shaped through subtle feedback from the collective consciousness he had only now rejoined. Whisper had noted that significant change was likely, given the events he had endured. He could not predict what form that change would take. Among the Hrithi, speculation on molt outcomes was a favored pastime. It was the closest equivalent they possessed to gossip. Quiet, endless consideration of how the hive might reshape one of its own. They remained perpetually fascinated by variation, by the living expressions of collective intent that each new form represented. The notes explained that the molt cycle had been delayed, suppressed by separation. Without the stabilizing presence of the hive, the process had remained dormant. Contact had reactivated it almost immediately, as though a long-deferred inevitability had finally been acknowledged. Outside the ship, Hrithi presence continued. They did not present themselves as guards or escorts. They simply remained nearby, their movements aligning in ways that suggested attention rather than oversight. Whisper had warned them this would happen. Because Kat and Kian did not share the hive, their experiences could only be interpreted through intermediaries. The Hrithi accompanying them would act as living conduits, allowing their perceptions, emotional responses, and behavioral patterns to be absorbed indirectly into collective awareness. Observation, for the Hrithi, was participation. Now that Whisper had named them as friends, their significance extended beyond curiosity. Their existence had become context. Their reactions carried weight. The Hrithi did not question Whisper's account. Its truth was already present within the hive. What remained was interpretation, meaning, placement. Their friendship, once an individual reality, was absorbed into collective understanding. To the hive, they were no longer unknown variables. They were influences requiring comprehension. If destabilizing, distance would follow, for the protection of both Hrithi and Terran alike. If beneficial, integration would be equally inevitable. Kat accepted this without comment. Kian studied Whisper's notes with quiet intensity, his expression shifting as he began to grasp the scale of what was unfolding. Somewhere within the station, a transformation was beginning. Not violent, not ceremonial, not dramatic by human standards. Simply necessary. Through it, the hive would learn not only what Whisper had become, but what it meant that he had chosen to return with them. His final instruction to them had been simple. Live as you normally would. Do nothing unusual. Do not perform. Just be who you are. The Hrithi assigned one of the security caste to accompany him. He did not know how they had determined his background so precisely. Nothing had been formally discussed. No records had been requested. Yet the choice felt deliberate. Kian did not question it. He borrowed Whisper's tablet before leaving, expecting to rely heavily on translation. Instead, he found movement, posture, and timing carried meaning the device could only approximate. The Hrithi who met him bore distinct black and red striping, sharply defined and symmetrical. Authority was implied through presence rather than display. They began in practical silence. Kian inspected equipment first, both his own and Whisper's. It was a task long overdue, and beginning there felt natural. The Hrithi allowed it. Armor segments articulated differently than Terran systems, layered for flexibility across multiple planes of motion. Weapons followed unfamiliar ergonomic logic, designed for limbs that did not share human geometry. Kian handled each piece carefully, assessing condition and field adaptation. He treated the gear with the same attention he had given Whispers during their shared survival. Eventually, the Hrithi initiated communication. The tablet rendered the question imperfectly. Why do you care for the tools of another species? Our survival was shared, Kian said. When that happens, you take care of what keeps the other alive. It stops being their equipment. If the person beside you falls, then you will too. Stillness followed, not emptiness. Processing. Another question. Why teach him to fight as you do? Because he chose to protect, and I had more training. Once someone makes that choice, you give them the knowledge to survive it. That is, friendship, in human terms. The concept required additional clarification. Kian supplemented translation with gesture and tone. He recounted the encounter with the Kreth, Whisper's actions, the collapse of assumed hostilities. The moment survival became interlocked. The Hrithi listened without interruption. Then came the deeper question. Why did he not carry Terran animosity into Hrithi space? Because politics is not survival, Kian said. Governments conflict. Individuals don't have to. I trust Whisper. I believe he trusts me. I would risk my life for his. I believe he would do the same. How can you know without the hive mind? Kian paused. With Terrans, sometimes we don't know. Not until the moment comes. When it does, we try to be better than we were before. The Hrithi's eyes glittered. A subtle gesture followed. Acknowledgement. And your mission? The Kreth are the greater threat. We are here to understand what they are doing. Recognition followed, not agreement. Then the Hrithi departed. Assessment complete, and in Hrithi terms, it had gone well. Kat eventually grew restless inside the structured stillness of the station. Curiosity drove her forward, though it yielded little she could interpret. The corridors remained deliberate puzzles of motion and purpose. Meaning existed everywhere, yet rarely translated. The copper-gold elder accompanied her without announcement. His presence drew no visible reaction from the Hrithi they passed. They acknowledged him as they acknowledged all others, through subtle gestures of awareness, rather than overt deference. Authority here did not require display. After several attempts at conversation met only with the single Terran word, curious, Kat stopped trying. The elder clearly understood more than he chose to express. Instead, he simply remained nearby, observing. Eventually, she wandered into a vast, domed expanse. It was the closest thing to outside she had encountered since arriving. Light filtered through layered, crystalline panels, diffused into soft gradients that suggested day without imitating any known sun. Beneath it stretched a cultivated landscape, grasses shaped into flowing contours, flowering growths arranged in spiraled patterns, plant forms unfamiliar yet instinctively appealing. The design was alien. It was also beautiful. At the center of the space, a group of young Hrithi moved in coordinated patterns across packed earth. Their feet produced hollow, rhythmic impacts as they stepped, paused, and shifted in paired formations. The ground had clearly been chosen for the resonance it produced. Groups attempted increasingly complex sequences, breaking apart in bursts of motion when synchronization failed. Their pedipalps flickered in visible excitement. Kat watched, smiling without realizing it. Memory surfaced, not as loss this time, but as rhythm. She noticed two long wooden poles resting against a boundary marker. The idea came to her with sudden clarity. Approaching the youths, she offered greeting gestures she had seen Kian use. Confusion rippled through their movements. The elder intervened then, communicating with a series of precise motions that carried authority without force. Kat pointed toward the poles and demonstrated how to hold them parallel. She showed the simplest cadence first: ground, pause, together. The Hrithi responded with interest, enjoying the structured percussion, but not yet understanding its purpose. So she stepped between them. Her movement was fluid, natural. Feet placed with precision between closing beats. Her body rotated with the rhythm, long hair fanning outward as momentum carried her through turns. She withdrew just as the poles clapped shut, re-entering on the next measure with increasing complexity. The watching Hrithi stilled. Pattern recognition gave way to fascination. Kat varied the tempo, encouraging faster sequences. She reached for a nearby youth, guiding them into the cadence with gentle insistence. Hesitation dissolved into participation. Around them, silence deepened. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of focused attention. Dozens of eyes glittering intently. Then the elder moved. At first his steps were measured, deliberate, testing the pattern carefully rather than imitating it. But as comprehension formed, his 4 locomotor limbs introduced variations Kat could never achieve. He layered motion into additional dimensions of timing and placement, creating cross rhythms that expanded the dance rather than disrupting it. The pattern became something shared, a language of percussion and movement carried from one moment into the next. Kat laughed softly, stepping aside, breath coming faster. She gestured for another Hrithi to take her place. More poles appeared, carried in by silent observers. New groups formed spontaneously, each experimenting with variations of the pattern. The hollow percussion of wood striking earth and wood striking wood echoed through the dome, interwoven with the synchronized cadence of many feet. What had begun as curiosity became shared expression. The park transformed into a field of movement. Hrithi excitement manifested through accelerating complexity and coordinated flow. Though Kat could not perceive the hive directly, she sensed the widening effect. More and more Hrithi arriving to witness or participate in the unfamiliar Terran rhythm. Eventually, the elder stepped away from the pattern. He regarded Kat in stillness. Light refracted across his copper-gold patterning, his eyes catching it in a way she could only interpret as joy. He inclined his body in a gesture that conveyed both acknowledgement and respect. "Is this what you came to show us?" he asked. Kat shook her head. "No. It belongs to my people, long gone. It mimics a bird dodging traps. They made games from danger, turned survival into rhythm, into challenge, into joy." The elder studied her more intently. "Earth?" he asked. Kat nodded silently, aware that Whisper had already shared much with the hive, yet still startled when knowledge manifested so directly. For a brief moment, the elder's limbs tremored with contained energy. Then stillness returned. The memory of that serene, dignified figure moving between the poles would remain with her for the rest of her life. and for the first time since arriving in Hrithi space, Kat felt something she had not expected to find there. Recognition. The days that followed did not unfold through dramatic revelation, but through quiet repetition that gradually reshaped understanding. Kian found the same security caste Hrithi waiting for him each morning. No summons was given. No formal acknowledgement exchanged. The pattern simply continued, as though it had always existed. Their conversations drifted through practical matters, equipment tolerances, atmospheric conditions, comparative materials. Yet alongside these mundane exchanges, new items appeared. Improved armor components, refined weapon assemblies, data sequences detailing Kreth movement across multiple systems. None of it was explained. None of it required explanation. Kian came to understand that the Hive did not negotiate trust in words. It expressed acceptance through utility. Each day he returned to Phoenix with more than he had left with, and with the growing sense that he was no longer being observed as an outsider. He was being prepared. Kat's days followed a different rhythm. She returned to the domed gardens without invitation, and each time found the space subtly altered by ongoing experimentation with movement and sound. What had begun as curiosity became practice. What had been play evolved into deliberate study. Hrithi youths refined rhythmic structures she had introduced, extending them into spatial patterns she could not fully perceive yet instinctively appreciated. The copper-gold elder accompanied her often. His silence gradually gave way to demonstration rather than explanation. He guided her through sculpted landscapes of harmonic resonance, showed her installations where vibration shaped growth patterns in living matter, and introduced artistic expressions that existed primarily in the coordination of multiple bodies across time. Through these experiences, Kat began to understand that Hrithi art was not just objects, but experienced events, something that existed only in participation. Neither of them spoke of this realization. It simply became shared. Across the station, subtle changes accumulated. Hrithi, who had once paused only to observe, now engaged more directly. Patterns of movement adjusted in her presence. Invitations formed without language. Recognition replaced novelty. To the Hive, she was no longer merely the first from Earth who had arrived with Whisper. She had become a point of reference. Somewhere deeper within the station, unseen but never forgotten, Whisper's transformation progressed. The Hive processed his absence as it processed all transitions, not with anxiety, but with integration. By the end of the week, both Kat and Kian sensed that the stillness surrounding them was not passive. It was preparatory. Something was about to return to them changed, and through that return, they would understand how much they themselves had already changed. When Whisper returned, the station did not announce it. The change propagated first through movement. Corridor traffic altered in subtle ways. Patterns of motion shifted, converging toward a central chamber with quiet inevitability. Kian sensed it before he understood it. Kat only felt the stillness gathering. They were summoned without summons. The elders awaited them in the same chamber as before. 8 forms arranged in deliberate geometry, and at the center, something unfamiliar. Black dominated the new exoskeleton, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, glossy in its newness. Through that darkness flowed structured copper patterning, intricate and deliberate, intersected by faint threads of deep blue that pulsed with quiet technical precision. No Hrithi present could recall such a configuration in living memory. Recognition rippled through the Hive not as surprise, but as focused attention. This was not Whisper's accomplishment, but the Hive's expression, which meanings ever fascinated the Hrithi. They would speculate what it meant and would wait to see if it meant tragedy or wonder. Kian stepped forward immediately. Whisper. The name came without hesitation. Kat remained still. She studied the figure before her with polite uncertainty, searching for familiarity that did not exist. Whisper inclined his body toward them. I am changed, he said simply. The elders began their discourse not in sound, but in motion. Complex exchanges of limb position, pedipalp articulation, and micro-shifts in stance formed layered arguments that the translation tablet rendered only as fragmented approximations. Deviation, integration, precedent, trajectory. It was insufficient. What they debated was not appearance, it was meaning. After a prolonged interval, the copper-gold elder addressed them in structured Terran speech. You have returned altered, he said to Whisper, and not alone in alteration. His attention shifted between Kat and Kian. These two represent different aspects of the same biology. Kian responded first. I am Terran, he said. I understand Terran structures, military, expansion, conflict, but I do not speak for them. He did not apologize. He simply stated fact. Kat hesitated longer. I am from Earth, she said. The Terrans are descended from us, but they are not the same. Their world shaped them differently. I cannot speak for them either, but I can speak for what we were. Earth will listen to me. The chamber absorbed this. The distinction mattered. To the hive, origin carried weight that expansion could not erase. The elder inclined slightly. Then you will both be necessary. He turned toward Whisper. And you will translate between these two versions of survival. Go forward. The black and gold elder's limbs settled into stillness as the chamber aligned around the moment. Guide the hive toward paths that do not yet exist. A pause, not hesitation, but recognition of scale. New paths carry uncertainty. Another. We assess that their outcomes will matter to us in ways we cannot predict. His gaze remained fixed on Whisper. We also assess that they may end you. The statement held no cruelty, only truth. Proceed. Then, after a longer silence, if meaning is gained, the hive will be rewarded. A final shift. If you endure, you may be as well. Within the quiet that followed, a pattern resolved in Whisper's awareness. Not his alone, but shared. A Terran concept carried through Kian, integrated during the molt. Growth through uncertainty. Advancement through risk. He inclined his body. I understand. The final Hrithi system fell away behind them with the same quiet efficiency as all the others. Gate emergence telemetry stabilized. Shared perception faded to distance. The layered stillness of the hive receded like a tide withdrawing from the mind. For a moment, the silence felt complete. Then Phoenix crossed into Lather Drift. The forward display ignited with color. Not gradually, all at once. The shared gate scan resolved into overlapping vectors and identity markers that filled the projection sphere in dense, shifting layers. Blue tracks flowed in disciplined arcs from the Hrithi gate. Purple lanes pulsed outward from the two Kravik vectors in heavy commercial streams. Yellow signatures threaded unpredictably between them, forming loose clusters that dissolved and reformed as new vessels translated in. White contacts flickered at the periphery, undeclared, transient, or simply indifferent to protocol. Occasionally, a track flared red. Just as quickly, it would vanish or revert. or fragment into multiple identifiers without explanation. There was no singular authority signature governing the field, no centralized arbitration presence smoothing irregularities into order. Instead, the three gates maintained the shared protocol autonomously, updating the system's consensus scan in real time. Jurisdiction was implied. Responsibility was not. Density is higher than expected, Kian said, already parsing movement behavior rather than raw numbers. The common comm channel burst into audible life. Voices overlapped in multiple trade dialects. Automated negotiation pings collided with convoy coordination requests. Salvage claims were argued in rapid succession, punctuated by bursts of static and tonal signaling that meant more to machines than to any organic listener. In Hrithi space, communication had been precise and sparse, meaning carried through structure rather than sound. Here, sound itself became structure. Whisper felt the difference as absence. No underlying awareness held the system together. Each signal existed for its own purpose, intersecting with others only when necessity demanded. Movement without unity. Kat studied the scan without comment, letting the chaos resolve into pattern. "Everybody and nobody owns this," she said finally. "It's amazing it functions at all." Stations, planetary facilities, and living structures filled the system in dense orbital strata, each owned, leased, or contested by those who used them. Law existed here, but enforcement was contractual. An independent policing consortium maintained baseline order, answering to protocol rather than allegiance. Near the Hrithi Gate, a small cluster of blue-coated vessels held quiet station, their presence more symbolic than operational. Across the system, similar formations lingered near each Kravik vector, watchful without intervention. Trade continued around them. Structure existed, but initiative belonged to whoever chose to act. A convoy block drifted past on the primary Kravik lane, purple escorts pacing the flanks with professional detachment. Yellow-coated independents cut across their wake at calculated intervals, timing passage for maximum efficiency and minimum confrontation. White tracks behaved differently. They slipped between lanes, adjusted course late, sometimes vanished from the shared scan long enough to raise questions no one formally asked. Another red flare ignited at the system edge. This one persisted for several seconds. Then a protocol update reclassified it. Kravik Gate Authority. Hrithi non-involvement acknowledged. The marker dimmed to yellow. Traffic resumed around the event as if nothing had occurred. Whisper watched the scan in silence. "This system moves," he said, without knowing what moves within it. Kian didn't look up. It knows. It just doesn't agree. Kat's attention shifted to a solitary freighter holding an erratic approach vector just off the main lane. Observation phase begins. The Hrithi briefing data replayed in Kian's mind as he tracked the vessel. Kreth raids were not unusual in frontier-neutral systems. Historically, they entered under false signatures, stolen transponders, mismatched hull identities, falsified registry chains. Border systems rarely invested in deep verification. Economic throughput mattered more than security perfection. Captured ships were hidden at remote staging bases. Crews, cargo, and hulls ransomed separately. Payment was almost always cheaper than recovery operations. Raids typically involved multiple clans. Competition was reputation. Reputation was survival. That pattern was absent here. Draugrim operated alone, and ships were not returning. No ransom demands, no debris fields, only absence. Forensic reconstruction of encrypted transmission fragments had confirmed their involvement. The disappearances were distributed across species and corporate affiliations with deliberate care, preventing unified retaliation. Word had spread, convoys had grown, but risk tolerance still existed, and risk created opportunity. They held position just beyond the main traffic concentration, watching the flow from the outer Kreth gate. Phoenix did not appear on the shared gate scan. The Hrithi had removed them from the consensus field, and the Kreth systems had chosen not to contest the omission. Then the freighter appeared. Large tonnage, independent registry. Purple-coded as Kreth origin. Running alone. Kian marked it. Cat, whisper. This is our best candidate. Kreth, Cat said, studying the data. Do you think Drogrim will risk that? The pattern does not exclude Kreth targets, Whisper replied. Only Hrithi vessels remain untouched. Then we shadow, Cat decided. No emissions. No intervention unless necessary. Kian caught the concern she didn't voice. We protect the crew first, even if it means losing the Kreth. She nodded once, not reassured, only resolved. Phoenix adjusted course, sliding into silent pursuit as the freighter continued deeper into the drift. Somewhere beyond the visible traffic lanes, something else was already aligning itself to intercept, and waiting. Hours passed in silent tracking. Then the trap revealed itself. A cluster of emergency pods drifted just off the primary lane, their distress beacon broadcasting low-priority salvage code. Nearby, a cargo container rotated slowly, registry tags intact. Valuable enough to tempt, not valuable enough to suspect. Too clean, Cat said quietly. That's bait. He will slow, Kian replied. Watch carefully, Cat said. We stay dark until confirmation, but we don't risk the crew. Whisper's focus narrowed. And something waits. The freighter adjusted thrust. Deceleration began gradually, cautious, professional, then further and further, until escape velocity margins vanished. The Kreth raider emerged from sensor shadow with surgical timing, not large, not overwhelming, but sufficient. The freighter was committed. Phoenix was already moving. The raider accelerated from shadow with precise vector alignment, its emergence timed to the freighter's lowest maneuver margin. No warning broadcast, no intimidation display, just commitment. The freighter reacted immediately, engines flaring in defensive thrust. Too late. Its mass and deceleration curve had already sealed the engagement envelope. Confirmed hostile, Kian said. Cat didn't hesitate. Engage. Phoenix broke silence with controlled violence. Their first strike targeted propulsion, not to disable pursuit, but to eliminate maneuver unpredictability. A focused kinetic burst shattered the raider's primary thrust assembly before its weapons systems fully cycled online. The Kreth vessel attempted evasive correction. It never completed. Secondary impact followed almost instantly, penetrating the mid-hull structural lattice. The ship fractured along engineered stress lines, its integrity collapsing faster than any damage control protocol could compensate. Debris expanded outward in a widening cloud. No escape craft launched. No distress signal transmitted. The engagement lasted seconds. Then there was only silence. The freighter's engines powered down from emergency output, its trajectory stabilizing as the debris field drifted away from the primary lane. Cat exhaled slowly. Status. Threat eliminated, Kian replied. No additional contacts. No secondary ambush signatures. Whisper studied the dispersing fragments. They intended capture, he said. Their configuration confirms it. Not today, Kat answered. She opened a directed channel. Kravik Freighter. This is independent vessel Phoenix. Hostile contact neutralized. You are clear. Static. Then a Kravik voice in slurred, accented Terran spoke. We saw the engagement. You destroyed them. Correct. A pause. Then, they were bold. Kreth don't usually risk Kravik hulls. You were operating alone, Kat said. That's because this is Kravik-adjacent space, the captain replied, defensive instinct surfacing beneath relief. Raiders don't usually target Kravik. They pick predictable ones, Kian said quietly. The captain absorbed that. Understood. Kat's gaze shifted to the drifting pods and cargo container. You may recover the salvage. It is safe. That's generous, the captain said. More than generous. You saved my crew. Then consider it compensation for your risk. The freighter maneuvered cautiously toward the pods. Whisper watched in silence. They will learn nothing from this, he said softly. Kat didn't answer. Beyond the immediate engagement zone, the drift continued its restless motion, trade lanes reforming around the absence as though nothing had occurred. Kian's attention returned to the wider scan. Can we see if the data core survived? He asked. We cut engines and depressurized. Something may be recoverable. There may be more we can find. Kat nodded slowly. And somewhere they're coordinating. The ruptured husk rolled silently in the void, its sluggish motion signaling death as surely as a corpse drifting through deep water. It was already becoming part of the system's background noise, another absence absorbed without record. Whisper spoke first. That would be my task then. I am the one best suited to recover what remains. Kian shook his head before Kat could respond. I'm going with you. This isn't something you do alone. Kat said nothing. The safety of the ship offered no warmth as she watched them prepare their EV suits. The drift outside continued to move, indifferent, busy, alive. The airlock cycled. They stepped into darkness. Minutes passed. Too many. When they returned, they carried only a handful of scorched electronic modules. Kian set them down with care. We'll see if these still speak. Kat exhaled. Relief she did not voice. Then we leave, she said, before someone decides to ask where their ship went. Phoenix turned from the traffic lanes and slipped into deeper shadow, seeking the quiet spaces between commerce and consequence. There, in the silence, they would decide what came next. The Phoenix drifted in silence beyond the traffic density of the drift. System noise diminished with distance. Trade chatter faded into statistical background, chaos bleeding into perception only when attention faltered. Only long-range telemetry and passive field mapping remained. Inside the tactical compartment, the recovered Kreth modules lay secured across the interface grid. They did not look significant. Scarred casings, burned lattice, damage that concealed unexpectedly clean internal structures. Phoenix's AI worked methodically, aligning known architectures against Kreth-encoded overlays. Kreth systems were rarely original. They acquired what others built, by purchase, coercion, or theft, forcing their symbolic structures into standardized control frameworks. That weakness became translation. Translation became pattern. Pattern became understanding. Data cross-reference improving, the AI reported. Estimated translation completion. 2 minutes. Kian leaned forward as the reconstruction map began to resolve. There, he said. That cluster. Overlay on system projection. The display shifted. Coordinates expanded into spatial context. Whisper studied the emerging geometry with quiet unease. Probable staging facility identified. The AI continued. Confidence, moderate. The outer system appeared on the projection sphere. Sparse mass distribution. Low-energy debris fields. No registered infrastructure. Only a scatter of minor asteroid fragments drifting within localized gravitational interplay, each tracing its own slow orbit inside the broader pull of the belt. At first glance, nothing distinguished the cluster. At second glance, 3 yellow-coded contacts orbited the formation. Vareth Registry, Independent Industrial Freighters, Holding Position. Within the density of unexplained tags across the drift's scan volume, they should have meant nothing. But once the first question formed, why? The randomness began to fracture. They were not transiting, not signaling, not maneuvering for extraction, simply remaining. Kian narrowed telemetry resolution. Why would Vareth ships idle at this distance for this long? Economics alone make it irrational, Kat replied. The Vareth are efficient traders. They do not waste effort without purpose. Whisper adjusted motion vector modeling. They are not idle. It resembles patrol behavior. The ships traced slow, deliberate arcs around a shared gravitational center, a nameless rock, unremarkable, unless it was not. What do you want to bet something is there? Kian asked. Whisper tilted his head slightly. What is betting? Kian blinked. It was rhetorical, he said, the explanation already collapsing mid-thought. You don't know what betting is? Without waiting for confirmation, he continued, attempting a tone of careful neutrality. It is the exchange of valued outcomes based on probability. If my probability proves correct, I gain what you offer. If yours proves correct, you gain mine. He nodded once, satisfied with the approximation. Whisper considered. I possess nothing of value. Then we make a gentleman's bet, Kian said. A favor owed to the correct outcome. Whisper processed this. If the rock is empty, I win. If Kreth are present, you win. Yes, Kian replied. Deal? He extended his hand. Whisper extended one of his own appendages cautiously. Kian grasped it and performed the Terran handshake gesture. You say deal when you agree. Whisper inhaled in the Hrithi manner. Deal. He looked at the hand Kian had just shaken, still uncertain of what had been exchanged. Beyond them, the nameless asteroid continued its slow rotation, and the 3 Vareth ships continued their silent orbit. They did not believe the ships were Vareth. The recovered coordinates had originated in Kreth-controlled space. Vareth vessels appeared in those records only as cargo, not collaborators. Victims, never partners. The conclusion was unavoidable. Assume hostile intent, Kat said quietly. Neither of the others disagreed. Phoenix's absence from the shared gate scan provided a decisive advantage. They could approach without appearing in the Vareth ship's passive traffic field. Detection would occur only when proximity scans forced active resolution. That moment would decide everything. If they are Vareth, Kian said, they will query first. And if they move first, Whisper replied, they are Kreth. Kat watched the slow orbital pattern unfold. And if we are wrong? Silence held for a fraction longer than necessary. Kian allowed himself a thin, humorless expression. Then they shouldn't be out here looking suspicious. The attempt at levity did not land. It did not need to. The thought remained unspoken but understood. Misjudgment here would not be a diplomatic incident. It would be irreversible. Phoenix altered course. No emissions, no identification broadcast, no warning. They would enter as hunters and discover whether they had become prey. Kat's eyes remained fixed on the orbital pattern. "They're not Vareth," she said. No one asked how she knew. She was already flying. Phoenix rolled gently beneath the plane of the drifting freighters, adjusting vector until each Kreth hull lay between another and their probable firing arcs. "Line of sight interference," she said aloud, more to structure her own timing than to inform the others. "I'll keep them shooting through each other. We eliminate them sequentially." Kian moved to the manual gunnery station without hesitation. "I'll take turret control." Whisper shifted to navigation and communications monitoring, silent but fully engaged. Phoenix accelerated, not toward the ships, through the geometry of their orbit. The first Kreth vessel reacted late. Its targeting sweep widened in uncertainty as Phoenix slipped across its forward arc. Kat tightened the turn. Now the second Kreth hull obstructed its firing solution. The hesitation lasted less than a second. It was enough. "Target locked," Kian said. His shot was surgical. A concentrated kinetic pulse struck the vessel's maneuver cluster. The impact did not destroy the ship. It removed control. The Kreth hull yawed sharply, rotation building as thruster asymmetry compounded the instability. Lights flickered, then failed. The ship remained structurally intact, but no longer alive. It began to drift. Kat was already repositioning. "They're flustered," she observed. "They're competing for firing priority." The remaining Kreth ships attempted aggressive vector correction. Instead of clearing arcs, they converged. Each maneuver degraded the other's targeting solution. Phoenix moved through their confusion like a smaller predator among larger, slower hunters. "Second solution," Kian said. This time he did not aim for a single node. A controlled barrage traced across the vessel's dorsal surface, severing distributed control pathways faster than damage containment could compensate. The ship lurched. Rotation accelerated unpredictably. Its forward momentum collapsed into uncontrolled spin. Hull intact. Systems dead. It tumbled away from the engagement zone, a silent artifact of failed aggression. "One remaining," Kian said, voice sharper now but controlled. Kat did not respond. She had already anticipated the final movement. The last Kreth vessel committed fully to direct pursuit, abandoning any attempt at coordinated positioning. "Predictable," she murmured. Phoenix pivoted across its approach vector, forcing the Kreth pilot to choose between collision risk and firing delay. The delay came. Kian fired. The impact struck along the vessel's structural spine, cascading through its stabilization grid. The ship convulsed in micro-thruster bursts before losing all coherent orientation. It spun wildly into the dark. 3 vessels, 3 kills. Silence returned with abrupt finality. The asteroid cluster remained unchanged. Kian released the turret controls slowly, only then realizing how tightly he had been gripping them. He flexed his hands, shaking tension from fingers that still trembled with residual adrenaline. His movements during the fight had been precise. Now his body remembered what his mind had suppressed. Kat allowed herself a brief, sharp grin. "Look who just got raided," she said. There was no triumph in it, only recognition of the inversion. Whisper spoke without turning from the projection. Target asteroid is locked. Phoenix AI is executing approach vector. A faint flutter passed through his pedipalps, a subtle, involuntary motion that Kian and Kat recognized after long familiarity. He had felt the violence too, not emotionally, physiologically. Something within the cluster had registered it as well. The silence that followed was not empty. It was waiting. The destroyed Kreth vessels drifted behind them, already dissolving into the statistical anonymity of the drift. Ahead, the asteroid cluster remained inert. Passive scans returned nothing of consequence. No emissions, no thermal anomalies beyond expected equilibrium variance, no structural signatures. For a moment, the recovered coordinates felt like an error, or worse, a trap that had already relocated. Kreth are not subtle planners, Kat said, though the absence unsettled her. They build where it is convenient. Whisper remained focused on the slow orbital rotation. Convenience does not exclude concealment. The asteroid turned, gradually, reluctantly. Then something caught the distant light, a brief, angular glint, not mineral, not natural. Kian leaned forward. There. As Phoenix closed distance, the illusion fractured. Standardized structural planes emerged from shadow, prefabricated modules embedded deep within natural fissures and erosion depressions. Industrial geometry masked by geological randomness. Docking apertures recessed into fractured ridgelines. Sensor baffles aligned with rotational shadow bands. Power distribution nodes hidden beneath layered regolith plating. The base had not been invisible. It had been indistinguishable. Borrowed architecture, Whisper said quietly. Of course, Kat replied. Why build when someone else already solved the problem? The modules showed no active defensive posture, no patrol craft, no broadcast identifiers, just function. Cold, utilitarian, temporary. A tool, not a home. Phoenix drifted closer. The asteroid continued its slow rotation, revealing more of the concealed installation with each passing minute. What had first appeared as incidental geometry resolved into intent. Processing bays, storage corridors, mass handling cranes, industrial scars where ships had been stripped of identity. Kat exhaled. This is not a fortress, she said. It's a butcher's table. Silence followed, and somewhere within the buried modules, systems began to wake. Phoenix docked at the clearest arm, leaving a clean path for escape if anything went wrong. Kian and Whisper donned armor while Kat made her way inside. The station appeared quiet. No movement or power signatures beyond life support. As the docking clamps sealed with a clang and hiss, Kian looked back at Kat. Stay behind us. Whisper and I go first. Not negotiable. Kat detected the determination in his voice. Yes, I'll follow, she said, not wanting to question it. Whisper and Kian took positions at the corner of the airlock doors, weapons trained, scanning carefully. Kian performed a quick look, surveying the corridor in a single practiced motion, then retreated to cover. Clear, he whispered. They moved forward in measured steps, covering each angle. Room by room, they progressed. Storage spaces, equipment bays, and narrow passages. The station was plainly laid out. Docks, storage, workspaces. Ahead, offices or labs led toward the main hangar and cargo doors. The musty urea scent reached them first. Faint but unmistakable. Mixed with body oils, it marked the Kreth presence. The residue of hunting, masking, and social signaling. Kat noted it silently. Kian's senses absorbed it instinctively. Claw marks scratched into walls, smudges of blood along metal surfaces, mostly cleaned but leaving streaks like blood on flattened grass of a hunting ground, told of previous victims. The carrion tone of the space pressed in subtly, a reminder of what the Kreth processed here. As they approached office doors, Kian's trained ears caught a faint anomaly, a sound so slight it could have been imagination. He signaled Whisper and Cat to hold. He advanced silently, muscles and armor in practiced coordination. The sound came again, unmistakable now. Someone, something, moved behind the doors. Kian thought quickly. Normally, he would allow the intruder a chance to identify themselves, not the Kreth. If you don't want mistakes, don't do suspicious things, he thought grimly. In a fraction of a second, he closed the distance, pushed the door, and moved to the corner. Two shapes leapt out, snarling. Shots rang, one from Kian, one from Whisper. Both collapsed with dull, bony thuds. Kian stepped forward, sweeping the adjoining offices with a quick look, clearing corners. "All clear," he whispered. Adrenaline pumped as he rapidly scanned monitors and workstations. "How did you know?" Kat asked quietly. Kian pointed two fingers to ears and eyes. "Experience." He calmed enough to sling his rifle. "Lab. Kreth scientists. Still dangerous. I have copies of the files. Nothing else immediately useful. Take a look if you want." Whisper confirmed the occupants. Scientists, low level but still Kreth. Kian brought up diagrams. Jump ship designs, Kravik hulls, one slightly larger than Phoenix, another cruiser-sized. Power balances, unconventional. The images depicted wraiths and essence being taken from corpses with a strange device, loaded into circular devices. Not stasis, but containment. Multiple at a time. As they passed through the offices to leave, a narrow corridor led toward a work bay adjoining the hangar. Kian slowed, signaling Cat and Whisper to cover angles. The air was still, but a subtle tang of organic matter lingered, faint but unmistakable. The room opened to a line of processing units, modular devices designed to strip, sort, and compress biological matter. Nothing alive moved within them, but the precision and efficiency of the machines spoke volumes. Cat exhaled softly. They're processing meat, organs, everything. Whisper's pedipalps twitched. "We do this with our food. Don't waste what is given or the life taken. But that is for animals." Kian studied the units, noting claw marks and maintenance logs scrawled into metal panels. "Pride," he muttered. "They don't waste. Every resource extracted. Doesn't matter if it's sentient or not." The crew exchanged a glance. It was not shock that froze them, but dread, the acknowledgement that the Kreth viewed sentient beings as raw material, food, and resource, the same as any other animal. The room was clean, efficient, unnervingly calm. No chaos, no signs of struggle. Just the silent testimony of a predator's logic, automated and methodical. They moved on, leaving the processors behind, but not forgotten. Each step toward the hangar carried that weight. The Kreth hunted not for need, but for proof of superiority, indifferent to the nature of their quarry. The collectors get all the press, stealing the dead. That is the Kreth, Kian muttered. They swept offices completely, leaving no corner unchecked. 2 mounds in a rear corner suggested crude habitation, the only signs of life. They approached the hangar cautiously. Empty. Pallets of scrap metal, remnants of captured vessels, and industrial processing equipment were scattered. In one corner, a round object rested on a movable cart. Its design seemed like a fictional power core housing sinister power, yet technically plausible. Looking designed as containment, but not for the forces of physics. They had seen the drawing, so they knew this wasn't fiction and that it worked as a power core. Much more, they knew what powered it. Kat froze. Something truly dreadful. We must take it. Kian shook his head. Not yet. Move it out of sight. If anyone comes back before us, they may assume it's been taken. Kat nodded. Let's get back to Phoenix. I need to notify the gatherers immediately. No one spoke of what they knew. The drawings, designs, and object. It worked. And it was real. Phoenix was where they left it at the docks, doors secured, waiting. They entered and quickly went to stations, Whisper and Kat to send files while Kian doffed and stowed gear, readying departure. Files, images, and diagrams from the base were secured and transmitted to the Gatherer network. Kat added minimal commentary, enough to provide context, but withholding the details that might reveal the full scope of what they had seen. The round object remained in the shadows, undisturbed, a quiet reminder of the base's hidden purpose. Kian checked system feeds and navigational data. Whisper monitored residual energy signatures and environmental readouts. Kat confirmed propulsion readiness. The silence between them was heavy but not tense. They had done what they came to do. Yet each of them knew. This was only the beginning. Phoenix eased from the docking arm, slipping into the shadows of the drift. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, the unknown. And somewhere nearby, in the dark, the Kreth were still out there, waiting. The crew readied themselves for what would come next. The system hung in muted light. Sparse asteroid clusters drifted across the starfield, indifferent and silent. Phoenix's hull groaned as she maneuvered along the outer belt. The memory of the Kreth corvettes lingered in the air like a taste that would not fade. Then, a flash. A sharp spike in energy readings. Residual gravitational shear rippled across the scan. Something had forced its way into reality. A jump ship, Kian said quietly, surprise cutting through his composure. First time I've ever seen one appear on live scan. He swallowed once. You usually only see that if you're sitting on a planned arrival point. His tone hardened. Get ready. This isn't coincidence. Whisper studied the forming signature. This configuration aligns with Kreth design variants. If it's jump-capable, we match it, Kian said, even if it's larger. Kat shook her head, eyes fixed on the tactical projection. We assume overmatch. Whisper, transmit telemetry to the Hrithi gate. Flag hostile. Transmission in progress. Confirmation latency estimated 20 minutes. Then we survive 20 minutes, Kat said. It's burning straight for us. Harness locks snapped into place. Kian slid into gunnery. Whisper stabilized navigation feeds. It has acquired us, Whisper reported, closing velocity increasing. That ship doesn't look undergunned, Kian muttered. If I hadn't seen the shear signature, I'd say its power balance was wrong for jump integration. He leaned forward. I'll target the vanes first, then propulsion. If we live, someone needs to know what they're building. Crew estimate 12, Whisper added. Phoenix rolled hard, vectoring into pursuit geometry. It's faster than us, Kat said. That shouldn't be possible. Weapons range, 2 minutes. The countdown began. Maneuvering to expose vane array. Gravitational dampers protested as Phoenix exceeded safe tolerances. Firing. Kian's shot lanced across vacuum. The Kreth vessel resolved visually, a pointed cylindrical hull, crude wings flaring from its midsection, jump vanes radiating from the stern like metallic petals. One vane cluster erupted into debris. "They won't be jumping from this system," Kian said, focused exhilaration sharpening his voice. The return strike hit like judgment. Phoenix convulsed. "They hit hard," Kat gasped. "EVA suits. Sequential. Whisper first. Then relieve Kian." Phoenix twisted through every evasive pattern Kat knew. Kian fired whenever geometry allowed. Armor held. Barely. If they slowed, they could aim. If they slowed, they would die. The Kreth ship hit harder, moved faster. Something about this ship was profoundly wrong. Whisper sealed his suit. Kian followed. They exchanged places without speaking. "Your turn," Kian told Kat. "I don't have your touch, so don't be too long." She nodded once and moved. Then, minutes later, whether by luck or error, the strike came. Clean, brutal. Phoenix's engines vanished in a scream of atmosphere and fire. Power collapsed. The ship spun. They had already strapped in. From the compartment, Kat's voice cut through the chaos, a low grunt of pain as inertial forces tore through her body as she was thrown across the compartment. Emergency systems flickered, a single surge of partial control. Kian seized it. Blind thruster bursts, fighting the tumble. Kat dragged herself into the nearest chair and locked down. Phoenix stabilized. The Kreth ship slowed, savoring Phoenix's helpless state, adjusting for the kill. Then Whisper spoke. "The hostile flag has propagated. System confirmation achieved." His pedipalps flicked rapidly. The Kreth reaction was immediate. It broke its slow arc for the kill and turned toward the nearest Kravik gate. Engines flared crimson. Within moments, they were only distance and radiation. Silence returned. Phoenix drifted. Dead. No thrust. No gravity. Only emergency glow and the slow mechanical breathing of life support. Tears floated inside Kat's visor. Pain, shock, relief, all at once. Kian broke the silence first. "You know," he said, false calm fragile, "I won that bet." Whisper turned. "Now you claim that? This is what matters." "Just saying," Kian murmured. "I won." "What is the debt?" Kian sagged against his restraints. "I'll decide if we survive." Whisper tilted his head. "May I counter-wager to nullify the obligation?" "Double or nothing," Kian said. "I predict rescue within 1-day cycle." "You know something we don't?" "No, only probability. I can explain the calculations if you would like." "The bet is good enough," Kian said. "Double or nothing." Kat began to laugh. Broken, human, alive. "You two are impossible, and I love you for it." Kian managed a faint grin. "I bet Whisper doesn't know what that means." "I do," Whisper replied, mildly offended. "Hrithi experience love." Silence settled again, cold, persistent. Beyond the hull, the belt drifted without concern. Inside, 3 suited figures breathed the same finite air. Whisper spoke first. "Reduce activity." Oxygen conservation improves survival probability. Kian gave a short laugh. Silence doesn't keep you alive. It just stretches dying. That is mathematically incorrect. It's experientially accurate. His voice hardened, not anger. Memory. When I was in the pod, when you found me, time stopped meaning anything. No voices, no movement, just breathing. I would have traded half my life for 10 minutes of conversation. Kat watched him. Tell me about Hrithi, love. Why now? Because survival is easier when you remember why it matters. She hesitated. And because silence makes you count minutes. Whisper processed this. Hrithi, love is layered. Duty, memory, resonance, chosen continuity. So hive loyalty, Kian said. No, Whisper replied. More intimate. Hive is obligation. Love is alignment. Kat leaned back. Humans think love is irrational, weak in the moment, strong over time. That is inefficient. Yes, Kat said. That's how you know it's real. Kian spoke quietly. Love is surviving something with someone and realizing you don't want to face the next impossible thing alone. Whisper absorbed this. Compatible with Hrithi. Time passed, measured only by air consumption and failing instruments. At the 23rd hour, the scan flickered, then stabilized. 2 signatures. Not 1, 2. They appeared without drama, yellow tags resolving from the gate corridor traffic, clearly coming their way. Gatherer vessels. Twin white hulls emerging into vision, impossible calm. Kian exhaled. Well, you win. Whisper did not respond. Kat frowned. There are 2. Yes, Whisper said. That is not normal, she replied. I have never heard of more than 1 gatherer ship in one place. The ships approached in synchronized stillness, attentive, focused. One aligned with Phoenix's docking port, the other turned toward the Kreth base vector. They unstrapped, moved to the airlock, crossed into gravity again. Kat grunted as pain returned with weight. A robed figure steadied her. You will come. Assessment required. Another approached, familiar. Riven, I believed you remained in Earth space. There have been changes, he said. Your transmission altered many equilibria. We cannot linger here. What is our path, Ina? Kat studied him. Haste, from a gatherer. Yes, he said simply. We must adapt. We need to find help. Phoenix is done, and we need something that can face the Kreth. Kian spoke. Terrans can't help. They don't even know we exist. Whisper added. The Hrithi will observe only. I carry no gold in my pattern. They reached the medical bay. Kat was placed on a diagnostic platform. Scans unfolded in silent cascades. A robed figure spoke. Rib trauma. Bone acceleration recommended. Kat looked at Riven. Even if we repaired Phoenix, she's way undergunned now. Then, I know where we must go. A pause. Earth Station. Ellen will help us. Riven nodded. We will make it so. There was more motion in them than before. More visible acknowledgement. More warmth. One inclined its head toward Kat. Ina, you have crossed a threshold, Another turned to whisper, "You are Ina because of what you have done, but it is clear now that you are not done." A third presence, impossible to localize, addressed Kian. "You survive beyond expectation. You have been chosen to be part of this, not created by Ina, but drawn to her purpose." Kian blinked. Good to know someone noticed. They did not smile, but something like approval permeated the space. Extraction proceeded efficiently. Phoenix was scanned, catalogued, recorded. "Beyond recovery," one gatherer stated. Kat nodded. "I know, but her files must survive." "They will. We will discuss them further when we have them translated." For a moment, nothing moved. Then the twin vessels adjusted their vectors in perfect agreement. Path acknowledged, and Phoenix, once a frontier vessel, now a memory container, was left drifting behind as the living stepped forward into the next phase of consequence. The journey toward Earth space unfolded without ceremony. There was no urgency driving the vessels forward, no visible pursuit, only the steady, irreversible drift of decision. The gatherer ships accelerated in silence, moving far faster than their aging freighter hulls should have permitted. Their thick-plated structures, framed in exposed industrial lattice, looked built for endurance rather than grace. They were forms shaped by survival rather than aesthetics, function given visible mass. Yet in the vast blackness, they moved with quiet precision, nimble, efficient, unobserved. There were no witnesses to question the contradiction between appearance and capability. No traffic lanes existed here to measure relative velocity. No observers remained to construct assumptions from silhouettes against distant stars. Only distance folded behind them, consumed by trajectory. Inside the steady gravity of their transport, Kat stood near a viewing aperture that revealed nothing but the slow procession of stars. She had learned long ago that the absence of visible motion did not mean stillness. Space always moved. It simply did so on scales that ignored human impatience. Across from her, Kian sat with his hands loosely clasped. The tension in his shoulders had diminished since their rescue, but it had not vanished. Survival had not restored normalcy. It had merely postponed consequence. Whisper remained motionless beside them, his pedipalps folded close in a posture that suggested contemplation rather than rest. His stillness was not passive. It was analytical. He absorbed environment and probability in equal measure. Riven and another unnamed gatherer sat with them around an oval table. Between them floated a layered data projection composed of fractured Kreth engineering records, fragments of technology, fragments of atrocity. The first device rotated slowly in holographic reconstruction. It was not large, not elaborate. A simple rifle-like mechanism that emitted no known force, yet its purpose was unmistakable. It existed to intervene at the boundary between body and separation, to pull essence early, to harvest what should never be harvested. Kian broke the silence first. "So they can extract it before it's ready to leave on its own." "Yes," Riven replied without inflection. Whisper's voice followed with quiet precision. "Before natural dissociation, before transition, before destination." The silence that followed was not confusion. It was comprehension. Kian leaned back slowly, processing implication rather than information. "That means eventually they can take it from the living." Riven did not soften the truth. "Not yet. But that outcome is inevitable if their progress continues." The weight of that inevitability settled into the room like gravity. None of them needed further explanation. They had already seen enough to understand the trajectory of Kreth intent. The projection shifted. A second construct formed in the air. The power core, dense, layered, fundamentally wrong. It appeared alive in ways machinery should never be. The internal readings remained partially untranslated, not because the gatherers lacked the ability, but because they had deliberately withheld full structural clarity. Some truths did not require technical confirmation. Thousands, possibly tens of thousands, compressed into sustained energetic coherence. Kian's jaw tightened as he stared at the spectral distortion patterns. That's not power generation. No, Kat said quietly. That's imprisonment. Whisper studied the fluctuating resonance signatures. They are not dormant. They are distressed. Can we free them? Kian asked. Yes, Riven said. A pause followed. But not safely yet. The dilemma hung between them like an unseen presence. They had always used the dead to guide the lost, to return essence to its rightful origin. Now the only reliable method to read these trapped spirits was the very technology that had enslaved them. We are working to modify the process, Riven continued. The Kreth require assessment protocols. They segregate unusable essences. We will adapt this capability to identify destination without perpetuating harm. Whisper spoke carefully. The Kreth intelligence is frightening when aligned with their intent. To use the device on the living would constitute moral desecration, Kat said. Yes. To dismantle the core prematurely risks scattering them beyond recovery. Yes. To delay is to prolong containment. Yes. Kian gave a humorless laugh. So every path is wrong. Every path is dangerous, Kat replied quietly. That is not the same thing. She shifted the projection again, isolating recovered schematic fragments. According to these, this core is larger than what powered the ship we encountered. Whisper adjusted the display. The cruiser configuration. They are building it. Kat's voice hardened slightly. Then we prepare for a cruiser, not the prototype. Kian nodded once. So escalation confirmed. The gatherers remained silent. Conflict analysis was not their instinct. Balance was. The projection dimmed slowly. Some horrors required distance before understanding could begin. Then another name emerged from the recovered data. Gravel, Draugrim clan leader. Architect, not raider. The holovid displayed coordinated doctrinal evolution, technological integration patterns, and behavioral convergence under singular leadership pressure. Someone was forcing Kreth civilization into transformation. Someone was succeeding. Whisper tilted his head slightly. This represents a strategic inflection. You mean he's a problem, Kian said. Yes. That's simpler. After a long pause, Kat spoke again. Riven, you said something before we left. He regarded her silently. You said we answer to the call of Ahya now. The word did not feel mystical. It felt structural, like gravity given intention. Whisper spoke first. The Ahya is not authority. No, Riven said. Then what is it? Kian asked. Alignment, balance, consequence. Riven's gaze settled on Kat. You chose this path long before naming it. When Nemesis came, when you rejected comfort for necessity. Kat snorted faintly. Comfort nearly killed my will to survive. Yes, Riven replied calmly, because it was never your path. He gestured toward Kian and whispered, and both of you refused the same gravitational pull toward safety. Kian considered this. I preferred when gatherers said less. Riven allowed himself the faintest trace of amusement. We are learning efficiency in communication. Kian squinted. Was that humor? It was an attempt, Riven admitted. So, are we gatherers now? Do we need robes? A ceremonial silence quota? Kian asked. No. You made similar choices, not the same commitment. You may continue wearing what you find comfortable. Kian groaned. Cosmic responsibility without uniforms. Wonderful. Whisper spoke. Then what are we to you? The previously silent gatherer answered. You are not gatherers. They turned toward the figure. Are we allowed to disagree? Kian asked. You may act according to your nature, the figure replied. You are not suited to follow ours, nor we yours. Whisper absorbed this. Mutual non-interference. Yes, but cooperative convergence. Yes. The journey continued without incident. Distance surrendered quietly. Stars shifted by imperceptible degrees. Time became something measured in consequence rather than motion. Eventually, Earth space announced itself, not with spectacle, not with ceremony, but with familiarity. Sensor harmonics changed first. Traffic density followed. Old navigation signatures resurfaced like memory returning after long silence. The gatherer vessels did not broadcast their arrival. They did not request escort. They did not explain their presence. They simply appeared. If two gatherer ships arriving together was unusual, the station did not acknowledge it. Earth had long ago learned not to panic at mysteries it already accepted as real. The station rotated slowly against the black, unchanged, patient, waiting in the way only ancient human constructs could wait. Docking clearance was granted before it was formally requested. Kat felt warmth pulse against her wrist. She had worn the bracelet so long she had nearly forgotten its existence. Now it responded before conscious thought. Recognition, not security. Home. The airlock cycled. Kat noticed the smell first. Familiar earth scents she had not realized were missing elsewhere. Atmosphere composition. Recycled vegetation. Trace compounds unique to long-lived human habitation. Smell returned. Time returned. Ellen was waiting on the dock. She did not move at first. Did not speak. She simply watched Kat step forward. You're late, Ellen said finally. Kat smiled. I took the long way. Behind her, unnoticed by every sensor and camera intentionally left dark on the docking level, two additional arrivals stepped quietly into existence along separate corridors. Ellen's eyes shifted past Kat. A subtle bend at the waist. Deliberate. Controlled. She saw them. Straightened. Looked back to Kat. We need to find them a place before the station remembers how to pay attention. Kat nodded once. There is more. We can talk at dinner. Can they still make my old dishes? Ellen's expression softened. Like you never left. Then she stepped forward and embraced her. Warm, human, uncalculated. I missed you, Ellen said, voice unsteady. Though I sometimes thought you wouldn't come back for me. Kat returned the hug with quiet certainty. Of course I did. They were just my excuses. Ellen laughed through the edge of tears. Well then, get yourself settled. I'll meet our guests at dinner. Kat blinked once, pushing back her own rising emotion. She motioned for Kian and Whisper to follow. The nearest elevator opened in response to the faint pulse of her bracelet. It recognized her before she consciously engaged it. They arrived at her quarters. She showed them the shared living space first, then the adjoining rooms that had always remained empty during her previous years on the station. Now they would not. She handed each of them a bracelet identical to her own. This gives you access to everything, she said. She emphasized the last word. Kian noticed. Whisper understood. Ellen will meet us at dinner. That's when I introduce you properly. Kian tilted his head slightly. Ellen? Meaning, what is she to you? Kat answered without hesitation. She's the station director, but she's also the only person who cared about me, not just about Catalan Reyes. A brief pause followed. She's important to me. Kian nodded. Explanation sufficient. Earth had already begun adjusting. It simply had not realized it yet. They settled in with the quiet disorientation that follows survival. Only weeks earlier, they had drifted in the dying shell of Phoenix, measuring time in oxygen and probability. Now there was gravity, warmth, stillness. Whisper had been correct. Probability had favored them, but probability had never felt like this. Kat began preparing for dinner. For Ellen. For what had to be said. For what could not yet be spoken aloud. Kian wandered into the upper domed common area. He moved slowly, almost reverently. It was not wealth that struck him. It was intention. Every object carried meaning. Every design choice carried history. He felt, unexpectedly, a flicker of unease. Terran art had always seemed functional. Here, function and meaning were inseparable. He wondered, briefly, uncomfortably, if Terran culture had grown efficient at the cost of depth. He did not voice the thought. Whisper observed without movement. He experienced the station as one might experience a living structure. Earth resonated differently than Terran space. Not superior, not inferior, primary. Terrans were divergence, an experiment that had persisted long enough to become identity. Not a flaw, but not origin. He catalogued the sensation without judgment, recognition without hierarchy. Kat rejoined Kian. Neither of them was comfortable with stillness. I picked things to eat from my own people, she said. They're considered ancient delicacies now. To me, it's just food. She smiled at him, almost shyly. Are you hungry? It shouldn't be long. Kian, still adjusting to the scale of everything around him, answered honestly. Yes, I would like that. A small silence followed. Then Kat frowned slightly. I need to figure out something for Whisper. Kian's awkwardness faded. I'll handle that. I think I know what he'd like. He hesitated. Though, I may need help figuring out how to ask for it. Kat smiled. Then we plan it together. He shouldn't feel like an afterthought. She looped her arm through his. A simple gesture, unforced. They walked toward the terminal. Behind them, Whisper remained still, watching, learning, understanding that this too was part of alignment, not survival, belonging. Dinner was not held in any of the formal reception halls, not in the diplomatic chambers, not in the ceremonial spaces that signaled importance. It was held in the common dining area of Kat's assigned quarters. Common did not adequately describe it. The room had been designed for high-level negotiation, for visiting dignitaries, for moments when history required privacy. Soft station light filtered through the upper dome. Earth's distant glow curved beyond transparent shielding. A single table, 4 seats. No observers, no recorders, no ceremony. Ellen entered without escort, as she always had before. She stopped when she saw Whisper, not from fear, from instinctive recognition of significance. Her eyes moved across his iridescent patterning, color gradients shifting with subtle internal modulation, controlled auroras across living form. "Magnificent," she said softly. It was not diplomatic language. It was the first honest word available. Whisper inclined his head slightly. "These markings represent my responsiveness to my hive," he said. "The black is protection. The copper is diplomacy. The blue indicates my birth caste. All remain present." Hrithi did not hide meaning. They displayed it. Ellen smiled faintly. "I perceive beauty first. Interpretation can follow." Kat felt relief she had not anticipated. She gestured toward Kian. "Ellen, this is Kian." Kian stood automatically, Terran discipline overriding unfamiliar surroundings. "Ma'am?" Ellen studied him briefly. "Terran," she said. Not a question. Kian blinked once. "Yes." Kat exhaled. "I didn't plan that part," she admitted. "It just happened." Ellen took her seat. "That is usually how history works around you." There was humor in the statement. There was also precision. Food arrived quietly. Courses paced with intention rather than protocol. Simple by Earth standards. Extraordinary by any other. Kat watched Kian take his first bite. Visible tension. He chewed, paused, looked at her with genuine surprise. "This is incredible." Kat's shoulders lowered slightly. "It's just old Earth food," she said. "Ancient recipes." "It feels alive," Kian replied. "Our food is efficient." He hesitated. "This feels like someone cared about the experience." Ellen noted the observation without comment. Kat smiled faintly. "I was worried you wouldn't like it." "I don't think I've ever liked food before," Kian said honestly. Whisper observed quietly. He had been provided a selection of modified dishes, textures adjusted, seasoning recalibrated, portions segmented. Kat watched him with subtle anxiety. "These are adapted from my people's cuisine," she explained. Kian said this would be compatible. Whisper studied the arrangement, then began eating using a specially provided utensil configuration. A brief flutter of pedipalps followed. He continued. Kian nudged Kat lightly. "He likes it." Kat did not understand the gesture, but she trusted the interpretation. Whisper then turned back toward Ellen. "Your station operates through layered autonomy structures." It sounded like conversation. It was analysis. "Yes," Ellen replied. "Earth prefers distributed responsibility. Hrithi governance favors distributed cognition," Whisper said. Ellen nodded. "I suspected as much." They spoke easily. Navigation protocols, trade harmonics, symbolic architectural logic, communication frameworks. It sounded like small talk. It was not. Two civilizations were mapping each other in real time. Meanwhile, Kat spoke quietly to Kian. "How are you holding up?" He exhaled slowly. "I feel like I'm standing inside someone else's past." "That's not entirely inaccurate." He glanced toward Whisper and Ellen. "They're acting like this is normal." "They're both accustomed to operating at this scale," Kat replied. Kian gave a faint laugh. "I'm still trying to understand how I got here." "So am I." Silence followed. Comfortable, heavy, necessary. Eventually, Ellen set her utensils down. "All right," she said. "Now you tell me everything." Kat did. She described the Kreth base, the harvesting technology, the power cores, Gravel, the emerging jump cruiser. She did not dramatize. She did not embellish. She reported reality, like gravity, like mathematics. The plates had long since been cleared. Outside the dome, station lights rotated slowly across Earth's curve. Kat folded her hands loosely, deliberate, human again. "Ellen, we need to arrange a meeting." "With who?" Ellen asked calmly. "Military leadership, civil authority, anyone who must understand what is coming." She glanced toward Kian and Whisper. "And it must include them." A pause. "We can do this quietly, or openly. Whatever Earth decides." Ellen leaned back slightly, considering not the request, but the consequences. Kat's voice softened. "I'm sorry if this puts you in a difficult position." Ellen smiled, not offended, not surprised. "Catalan Reyes," she said gently. "I am the director of the largest and most strategically significant station in Earth space." She allowed the statement to rest. "I negotiate with governments and militaries as part of breakfast." A faint smile. "I think I can handle arranging a meeting." Kat blinked, then laughed softly. "Sorry. I never thought of you that way." Ellen's expression warmed. "That is because I never wanted you to." Outside, Earth turned, unaware, but already changing. The meeting was not held in a grand chamber, not in a council hall, not beneath banners or ceremonial architecture. It took place in a strategic briefing room, functional, controlled, deliberately human. Detail and lived-in depth existed everywhere. Unlike the sterile, controlled Terran formality, Earth did not dramatize power. It exercised it. A long table, neutral lighting, no observers beyond those required. Security existed, but it did not announce itself. Kian noticed that immediately. Terran command environments were sharper, more rigid, more performative. This felt confident. Whisper observed without movement. Earth's decision structures felt layered, distributed, alive. Ellen stood at the head of the table, not as a superior, as a coordinator. Kat remained slightly behind her. This was Earth's moment, not hers. Introductions were brief, names given, ranks implied rather than stated. Then attention settled on Kian. He shifted slightly in his seat, uncomfortable with focus. "Terran representative," one official said, not formally, simply. Kian blinked. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he replied. "I'm not anyone important. I was infantry, a scout, a survivor. Half protest, half habit." The admiral across from him regarded him calmly. Terrans will accept whoever Earth chooses to speak with. Kian remembered Terran command tables, the way decisions formed like pressure. This was not pressure. This was inevitability spoken calmly. A pause. And Earth chooses you. Kian sat back, processing. Because I was there? He asked. Yes. Because I understand the situation? Yes. Because I survived? Yes. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. Son, survival is often the most relevant qualification. Kian exhaled slowly. He did not argue further, oddly feeling more comfortable with the Admiral's tone. Part of him already understood. He simply had not accepted it yet. Attention shifted to Whisper. There was no fear, no visible hesitation, only focused curiosity. Hrithi representative, Ellen said, not as a declaration, as recognition. Whisper inclined his head. I represent my own pattern, he replied, not the entirety of my species. That is sufficient, another official said. We understand divergence within distributed civilizations. Whisper studied them. You do not perceive Terran Hrithi friction as your concern. No, Ellen said. That conflict is not foundational to Earth. A military officer allowed himself a faint smile. In human terminology, a whisperer refers to someone with near-magical communication ability with a specific species. He gestured toward Whisper. Would that make you humanity's whisperer? Ellen answered before Whisper could. That certainly fits. Whisper's posture shifted subtly, as if reassessing, as if recognizing something unexpected. On Earth, humans might be the whisperers. Kian stared at Ellen, at the officers, at the quiet acceptance of the moment. Terran Command would have framed this as history. Earth treated it as responsibility. He began to understand something uncomfortable. Terrans were intense. Earth was settled. Then Kat spoke. The atmosphere changed, not dramatically, but definitively. The Kreth situation cannot be contained through diplomacy, she said. Her tone was not emotional, it was structural. Their technology represents a civilization-level moral hazard. Silence. She continued. No variant of this technology can be allowed to survive. Not hidden, not studied, not preserved. If it exists, someone will justify its use. That landed. Not as argument, as inevitability. This is not containment, she said. This is eradication. The room absorbed the statement, not shocked, but attentive. One admiral spoke quietly. This is not merely dangerous. A pause. It is an offense against the order of creation. Several others nodded, not ritualistically, not politically, simply in agreement. Kat activated the projection. Kreth base schematics, power core structures, cruiser design frameworks. The officers studied everything. Carefully, methodically. They saw the pattern. More importantly, they saw the convergence. Gatherers, Hrithi, Terrans, Kat, Ellen, history repeating. In altered form. One senior official spoke. This resembles the strategic convergence that defined Earth's survival during the asteroid era. No one contradicted him. Kat finished. I need a ship capable of confronting their emerging cruiser class. A pause. And a crew. if necessary. Earth did not debate long. Earth did not fear decisive action. "We will provide you with a vessel," the Admiral said. "New class? Frigate scale?" He reviewed the data again. "It will be sufficient." Kian's head snapped toward him. "A jump frigate," he said, disbelief unguarded. The Admiral raised an eyebrow slightly. "It is a ship." A faint smile. "An expensive one, but still just a ship." He leaned back. "Whatever jump vessels exist in Terran service." He did not finish. He did not need to. Here. They were not rare. Kian sat in stunned silence, perspective shifting again. Earth did not hoard survival. It normalized it. Kat spoke quietly. "It should be called Phoenix." Recognition moved through the room. "The rebirth of the first," she said. The Admiral nodded once. "Phoenix it is. No ceremony, no declaration, just acceptance." History moved forward.